You've wanted to change your life for a while now. You know what to do. So why haven't you done it yet? Daily English Lab, the podcast where real conversations help you speak real English. Hey, English learners. Welcome back to Daily English Lab. I'm Lily.
And I'm Henry.
And today's episode is one of those ones that's about two things at once. You're going to practice your English, naturally, through real conversation. And you're also going to hear something genuinely useful about how change actually works. Because we talk about changing our lives all the time. New year, new month, new Monday, new version of ourselves that starts tomorrow. And tomorrow has a way of becoming next week. And next week has a way of becoming next year. Today, we're talking about why that happens and what actually breaks the cycle. Not motivation tricks, not willpower hacks, the real mechanics of how lives actually change. In natural, conversational English, the kind you can use immediately. Let's get into it.
Henry, let's start with the thing nobody says out loud. Most people who want to change their lives already know what they need to do.
That's the uncomfortable truth. The information isn't usually the missing piece.
You know you should exercise. You know you should spend less. You know you should study more. You know you should reach out to that person. You know.
And yet, knowing doesn't produce doing. There is a genuine gap between understanding something intellectually and actually living differently.
So, if information isn't the answer, what is?
I think the answer is environment. Not motivation, not discipline, not willpower. The environment you're in.
Explain that.
Every behavior you have right now, good and bad, helpful and unhelpful, is partly a response to your environment. The things you see when you wake up, the people around you, the systems and structures that make certain actions easy and other actions difficult.
If your phone is the first thing you reach for in the morning, it's not entirely because you lack discipline. It's because your phone is right there. It's the easiest thing.
And if your running shoes are by the door, you're more likely to run. Not because you suddenly have more willpower, because you removed the friction from the right choice.
Change the environment, change the behavior. Almost automatically.
That is genuinely how a lot of behavior change works in practice. Not through monumental effort, through small, strategic design of the spaces and systems around you.
Henry, tell me about a change you made that actually stuck. Not one you attempted, one that became permanent.
There's one that stands out clearly. About 3 years ago, I wanted to read more. Classic intention. I had books everywhere. I never read them.
The decorative bookshelf problem.
Exactly. Books as aesthetic rather than actual activity. I tried setting reading goals. I downloaded apps to track my reading. I told people I was going to read more. None of it worked for longer than about 2 weeks.
What changed?
I moved one thing. Just one. I put a book on my pillow every morning when I made my bed.
That's it?
That's it. A book on the pillow. Which meant when I got into bed at night, the book was already there. Not on a shelf across the room, not on my phone requiring an app. Right there. In my hands before I even decided to read.
You removed every step between intention and action.
Every single one. And I read more in the following 6 months than I had in the previous 3 years. Not because I became a more disciplined person, because the book was on the pillow.
The environment made the right choice the easy choice.
And here's what really matters. After 6 months of reading every night, I stopped needing the book on the pillow. The habit had formed. It became what I just did. The environment trick got me started. The repetition made it mine. That transition from forcing yourself to just doing it is the whole goal. And most people never get there because they try to use willpower to bridge the entire gap, rather than using environment design to shrink the gap until willpower is barely needed.
Lily, what about you? Tell me about a change that wasn't just environment, that required something deeper.
Mine is harder to talk about because it involves admitting something uncomfortable.
Go ahead.
A few years ago, I realized I was living a life that looked right from the outside and felt wrong on the inside. Good job, stable situation, ticking all the boxes that I had been told mattered.
And underneath?
Underneath, I felt like I was performing a version of my life rather than actually living it. Like I was playing a role that someone else had written and I had just kept saying the lines.
That's a heavy thing to sit with.
It is. And the reason I hadn't changed it wasn't environment. It wasn't information. It was something else entirely. It was identity.
Say more about that.
The life I was living had become who I thought I was. The job title, the path I was on, the expectations I had met. Changing any of it felt like destroying myself, not improving myself.
Because you had become the role rather than just playing it.
Completely. And the change I had to make wasn't a habit or an environment tweak. It was a fundamental renegotiation with my own sense of who I was and what I was allowed to want.
How did you do that?
Slowly. Through conversations, some of them very difficult. Through writing, through letting myself admit privately what I actually wanted before I was brave enough to say it to anyone else.
The private admission first.
Always. You have to know what you actually want before you can move toward it. And a lot of people have never let themselves know that, because knowing creates responsibility, and responsibility is uncomfortable.
If you don't know what you want, you can't be blamed for not having it.
Exactly. Not knowing is its own kind of protection. And one of the most important changes I made was giving up that protection, deciding to know, and deciding to be responsible for what I knew. Dear learner, maybe your change is more like Henry's, a habit you want to build, an environment you want to redesign, something practical and achievable.
Or maybe it's more like Lily's, something deeper, an identity that needs updating, a life chapter that needs to end so a new one can begin.
Both are real. Both are hard in different ways. And both are possible.
Today, we want to give you the English to talk about both. Because being able to articulate change, to describe it, discuss it, process it in language, is part of how change becomes real.
Let's get practical. There are 3 levels at which change can happen, and most people only try to change at the first level, which is why most attempts fail. Level 1, outcome change. You try to change the result. I want to lose weight. I want to save money. I want to speak English fluently. You focus on the outcome.
This is the least effective level to start from, because it gives you no process, just a destination with no road.
Level 2, process change. You change the system. I will exercise 4 times a week. I will put money away every Friday. I will practice English for 30 minutes every morning. You focus on the action.
Better, much better. process change actually creates behavior, but it still has a ceiling because it's driven by motivation, and motivation is unreliable. Level 3, identity change. You change who you believe you are. Not, I want to exercise more, but I am someone who moves their body. Not, I want to save money, but I am someone who lives within their means. Not, I want to speak English, but I am an English speaker.
Every action becomes evidence of the identity, and the identity makes the actions easier because they're no longer something you're trying to do. They're just what you do.
I am someone who reads before bed. The book on the pillow isn't a trick. It's an identity expression. That reframe changes everything. Not, I'm trying to read more. I'm a reader. Not, I'm trying to learn English. I'm someone who learns English every day. The language of identity is the language of change that lasts.
Let's talk about the blockers, the things that genuinely stop change from happening even when someone wants it.
First blocker, all or nothing thinking. If I can't do this perfectly, I won't do it at all. This belief kills more potential change than almost anything else.
Because perfect conditions never arrive, and while you're waiting for them, nothing moves.
The antidote is minimum viable action. What is the smallest version of this change I could make today? Not the perfect version, the possible version.
Second blocker, the wrong time frame. People overestimate what they can change in a week and dramatically underestimates what they can change in a year.
1 year of 30 minutes of daily English practice is over 180 hours of practice. That's fluency level progress. But 30 minutes a day feels like nothing in the moment.
The compound effect of small, consistent actions is invisible until suddenly it isn't. And most people quit before the invisible becomes visible.
Third blocker, changing alone. Research consistently shows that people who try to change in isolation are far less successful than people who change within a community or with accountability.
Not because they lack discipline, because humans are social creatures whose behavior is massively influenced by the people around them.
Who you spend your time with is one of the most powerful environmental factors of all. Not the apps, not the goals, the people.
Show me your 5 closest relationships, and I'll show you your next 5 years.
That's a significant claim.
It's also consistently supported by research. The people around you normalize certain behaviors, certain ambitions, certain standards, and you drift toward what is normalized.
Which means sometimes changing your life requires changing or expanding who is in it. Let's take today's most powerful phrases into the word tour.
Our first phrase is compound effect. Compound effect. Compound effect. Compound effect. The compound effect describes how small, consistent actions accumulate into large results over time. You could say, the compound effect of daily practice is more powerful than any single breakthrough. Or, real change relies on the compound effect. Small things done consistently.
Our next phrase is friction. 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 In behavior change, friction describes the effort or resistance between you and an action. You could say,
I reduced the friction between me and exercise by putting my gym bag by the door. Or adding friction to bad habits and removing friction from good ones is a powerful strategy.
Our next phrase is identity shift. Identity shift. Identity shift. An identity shift means changing your fundamental belief about who you are. You could say, real lasting change usually requires an identity shift, not just a behavior change. Or when I stopped saying, I'm trying to learn English, and started saying, I am an English speaker, everything changed.
Our next phrase is minimum viable action. Minimum viable action. Minimum viable action. It means the smallest possible version of a good habit that still counts. You could say, on hard days, I focus on minimum viable action. Even one sentence of English practice counts. Or, don't wait for perfect conditions. Start with minimum viable action and build from there.
Our last phrase is accountability. 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 Accountability means being responsible to someone or something outside yourself for your actions. You could say, having an accountability partner dramatically increases the chance of following through. Or, accountability doesn't mean someone checking on you. It means someone who cares whether you do the work.
5 phrases: compound effect, friction, identity shift, minimum viable action, and accountability. 5 phrases for the real mechanics of changing your life. Now it's time to use your English right here. This is Speak with Lily. Say your lines out loud, honestly and with intention.
Let's talk about change. What is one thing in your life you have wanted to change for a long time?
Good. Now tell me, what has stopped you so far? Which blocker is most true for you? All or nothing thinking, wrong time frame, or going it alone?
That's an honest answer. Now, what would minimum viable action look like for this change? The smallest version that still counts.
Now tell me, what identity shift would support this change? Complete this sentence. I am someone who...
Say that again, out loud, like you mean it.
One final question. What is one small environmental change you could make today that would make your desired behavior easier and your unwanted behavior harder?
That's your starting point. Not a plan, not a goal. One environmental change. Today.
Thank you for being honest with yourself today. That takes something.